This video is going to demonstrate how we do our podcast hosting over here at Rykerr Medical. There's a written set of notes that goes along with it that is posted on our blog over on the webpage. We'll also add a link in the notes of this video. As a quick summary, we used to use a third-party service to do the podcast, but the issue is that if that service ever goes away or if there's an issue with our account, we'd have to start all over. Creating our own RSS feed allows us to manage the thing independently. If a given host ever goes away, we simply port the thing over to another host without much headache. We held off on doing this for a while because we didn't know how to do it and didn't know how to code or host the thing. We've got it all worked out now, and here we are sharing it with you and the world. So, these are the steps we'll work through. No need to discuss them now. Let's just move on to number 1. Hosting our files on archive.org. Archive.org and the Internet Archive is a cool project that seeks to save things on the internet for future generations. Another cool thing you can do on archive.org is upload and save files to their program, which is perfect for our podcast situation because we need to get our podcast files from our devices up onto the internet so others can access them. The video is showing the super simple process of uploading an audio file of a podcast episode along with a photo onto the platform. Of course, you'll need to become a user and make a free account, but we've omitted showing all the details simply to save space and time. And then as you can see, it allows us to enter metadata, although we don't necessarily have to. And now we have our files hosted on a page at archive.org, which is rad. There are specific ways in which archive.org hosts these files that is fundamentally different from, say, OneDrive or Google Drive, and allows us to use this process for podcast hosting. We've discussed that a bit in the blog post that goes with this, so take a look there if you're interested. And all of the clips of us doing things are screen captures on an iPad, but you can also do this in a browser just as easy. Sweet. So files on the internet. Next step is to build and host an XML file on GitHub. First sub-step here is to set up the GitHub page. Now, GitHub is a platform for software developers and programmers to host, share, collaborate on code. We have found a way to use it for our podcast hosting needs, but that's not necessarily what the thing was intended for. That said, it works pretty well. So go make an account, log in to this main page. We have to set the system up from a web browser, but once it's all good to go, we can edit the thing and publish episodes from the GitHub app on any device. Let's start by making a new repository called Landing. We'll then make the following pages: README, Feed, and Landing. The README will probably be created or prompted automatically by GitHub when you create the Landing repository. You can type whatever you want here, and that description will show on the repository page. Then you create the feed.xml and index.html files by clicking Add File and Create New File as shown. We'll talk more about the feed.xml file in just a moment. That's the code that makes this thing work. And the index file, we think, allows the page to get found on the internet. But to be honest, we're not exactly sure how that works. Just that it's a necessary ingredient to this whole thing. Without it, the system won't work. And then the next step is to enable GitHub pages as outlined in these steps, which were provided by ChatGPT because we couldn't figure out how to make it all go once we got this far. And then we'll have a URL for our GitHub page. All right, next step is to create the XML file, which, as I already mentioned, is the code portion of the RSS feed. Go back to the repository, click on the feed.xml file, then hit the Edit tab up in the top right. From here on out, you can always edit the feed.xml file from either the browser or from the GitHub app on whatever device you're on. This specific example shows how it looks on an iPad. Now, the text or body of the feed.xml file contains all the information about the podcast. Up top is general information, then each episode will have its own entry, And then at the bottom, we just have to remember to close all the open tabs for everything. There are general rules for what needs to be in an RSS feed for it to work across platforms, and then there are specific rules for different hosts. We recommend following Apple Podcast rules, as they've pretty much monopolized the space, and most other hosts will work just fine if you follow the more stringent requirements of Apple. And then this is what the feed.xml code or file looks like if you open your RSS feed URL in a browser. To get you started on this part, simply copy the code shown here from our write-up or blog post. We included a text version of our feed and also like a made-up example. You can just copy that and then edit to add your specific content. One thing to point out here is the URL in this screenshot. Your URL for your XML file will be similar, except it'll have your username on GitHub in place of Rykerr Medical. You'll need this URL in the next step, which then takes us to validating our RSS feed. This step basically allows us to see if the XML file works as it's supposed to. You basically use an RSS validator tool, drop in your feed's URL, and it gives you a report on any issues. There are many of these, but these are two that we use. And then here's how it looks. Now, if you run into an issue and you can't sort it out with the feed validator tool, for example, if it gives you something to change and you're not quite sure what it says, you can use ChatGPT or any other AI tool, share your feed with them, and they can help troubleshoot, which is exactly what we did with our feed when we first swapped to the system. So that's what the video is showing. And then, of course, once you make a change, just be sure to go validate it again until it's all good to go. Last step, we'll show you how to host the RSS feed on both Spotify, which is what we use at Rykerr Medical, and Apple, which is also totally just fine to use, and we've used it for other things in the past. In either case, you make an account, and then you have to manually add the URL you want instead of the one that they assign to you. The steps here are pretty self-explanatory, as you can see in the videos. It's mostly a matter of just knowing where to find the space to insert your RSS feed. And that's it. Now you can fulfill all your podcasting dreams and carry the fruits of your labor from platform to platform without ever having to worry about needing to rebuild it all over again.